Hello viewers, welcome to Top Notch Online TV. With you today is none other than Teacher Fidelis from Alliance High School. I'm a teacher of English, an author, and an editor. I'm so excited today because I have two beautiful and charismatic teachers. To start with, we have Teacher Rispa. She's from PCA Kikuyu Boys High School. She's a teacher of English, an author, and of course, she will be helping us today analyze the characters in the book. Next, we have the most beautiful teacher, Teacher Amis. She's from Alliance Girls High School, a teacher of English and an author. Welcome.
Thank you.
Just to take you back, last week we looked at the title of the book, we looked at the cover, and the teachers here assisted us to discuss everything that we needed. We looked at the main characters. We had Professor Kimani. Which other character? Gobile Melusi. Yes. We discussed Professor Kimani. We discussed Seif. Yeah, and today we shall be looking at Dr. Afolabi, who is the guide. He's sent to the summit as a guide and an advisor to the president. Away from that, we have other minor characters in the book, and we shall be looking at Miss Fiona McKenzie. We have Thaddeus Longway and Nicholas. So looking at these characters will help you students at home be in a position to talk more about fathers of nations. To start with, we shall be looking at Dr. Afolabi, Dr. Abiola Afolabi. Yes, that's correct, yes, right? Yes, yeah, and maybe Teacher Rispa, could you tell us who is Dr. Abiola Afolabi?
Pleasure joining you, viewers. I'll be discussing Professor Afolabi. His other name is Abiola.
Yes.
He's a professor at the University of Ibadan. He has been educated at Harvard. And Dr. Afolabi, he's coming to the summit. He came as an advisor towards advancing Way Omega. Dr. Afolabi is married to an American woman, a white American woman by the name of Pamela. But recently they got divorced. Dr. Afolabi and his wife had a plan that they all wanted 2 children. Dr. Afolabi, being an African, he had wanted to have his own 2 children, biracial. But then the wife had another idea. The wife's idea was that they should adopt 2 children. Her reason being that Africa had a lot of children. Why don't they take some of the African children off their hands? But then the 2 of them never settled for a compromise. Therefore, they ended up having no children. It happened that Afolabi's clan decided that he should marry another woman, and through his cousin, they brought him a woman. From the same Yoruba ethnicity. And Pamela was so angry at that action. She had told Dr. Afolabi that he needed to kick his relatives out. But when Dr. Afolabi refused, the woman decided that she had been wronged, and later on, she filed for a divorce. About Dr. Afolabi, you can also see he seems to be someone who believes in Way Omega, as the ideas advanced by Way Omega are in line with his book, Failure of African States.
Wonderful. So, of course, we're looking at an African man. An African man believes that he has to sire his own children. But what does Pamela say? Pamela thinks that we have so many children in Africa, and she actually talks about a pool, and that they should just go and get 2 kids from the ones that we have in Africa. But Dr. Afolabi can't hear any of that. So they have an impasse, and as a result, they don't have any children of their own. So the next thing we shall be looking at is why Dr. Abiola Afolabi accepts the call to join AGDA from Thad Longway. Teacher Amis, kindly take us through.
Thank you, Teacher Fidelis. Hello, viewers. So I'm going to look at why or how Dr. Afolabi ends up as a member of AGDA, or as a guide to the path travelers. So before he was invited by the ends of state as the advisor to the summit, he had gone to Washington. He had been invited by the Foundation of Democratic Rule in Washington to address an annual conference. So in that conference, that's where Thaddeus Longway saw him. He listened to his talk, he listened to his speech, and he liked it.
Yeah.
Although he said that he was a backbencher, but he listened to everything and he liked his ideas. So on his way from Washington back to Nigeria, because as my colleague has said, he's a Nigerian, back to Nigeria, Thad finds a way of becoming his seatmate in the flight. So he had booked the first class, and so he makes some sort of a scuffle and wants to be moved to the economy class so that he can sit with his friend. But note that Abiola wasn't his friend. He didn't even know him.
Yeah.
He just wanted to sit with him so that he can have that chance to talk to him and persuade him to join Path Alpha. So when he sits next to Abiola, he starts by saying that he listened to him and he gave a very good speech during the conference, and also says that actually what really caught his attention during the speech is that the guy who was asking, there was a man who was asking so many questions during the question answer forum about his speech, about the state of Africa. And so he asks Abiola what were his views according to the state of Africa. And Abiola, of course, says that according to him, he supports a document called Way Omega. And that is why, actually before that, Thad had mentioned to him that he knows that he has been appointed to be the advisor to the ends of state. So he asked him what was his views concerning what the document Way Omega talked about, and he says that he actually advocates for it because according to him, the document is going to eradicate some of the evils in the African countries, such as military coups, such as rigging of the elections. But of course, Thad opens his eye. It tells him that what you want to happen is not the little thing that Path Alpha will put on the table. So actually what we're talking about is not as per se what not Way Omega will offer, but what you want to happen. So it tells him that he has a solution, because Way Omega is not going to eradicate all the ills in the society, considering that now it has become worse. Other than poverty, other than the rigging of elections, the military coups, there are other what?
Issues
that have come up. So the African state is becoming worse. Now we have corruption, and now we have impunity. And he goes ahead to explain that those who are corrupt are not punished. They are rewarded with impunity. And impunity becomes what now? It's like the fifth ill. Yes, the fifth ill in the society. So it tells him, so Abiola asks, do you have a solution? Since you're saying that Way Omega, what we have is not offering a solution to our problem in Africa. Do you have a solution? And that's now when he introduces Path Alpha to Abiola. He gives him a document and says that Way Omega is theoretical. It has all these big ideas that they're not planning to implement. But Path Alpha, on the other hand, is more practical. They might be like the bottom half kind of a thing. They're starting from the bottom, but they have ideas that are practical and that can be easily be implemented. So he says he gives him a document, tells him to read it and think about it. So just to emphasize, he had been appointed as the advisor for the summit. This summit was supposed to be attended by the 49 heads of state plus the host.
The host president.
The host president, making it 50 presidents. So he had been invited to go to this summit and go and advise them theoretically, which actually angered Abiola, because he wanted to give a practical approach, not the theoretical approach. So now Thad tells him he doesn't want him to step out of this position that he has been given as the advisor. He has to remain and like pretend that he's supporting Way Omega, because the moment he pulls out and he sees he's no longer supporting Way Omega, then they're not going to have that door into the summit. So they're using him to get
into the summit.
They're using him to sneak in Path Alpha into the summit. So he has to pretend that
He's actually
supporting way Omega, even if in the on the ground or in real sense, he's supporting path alpha. So that is why later on, when he's in Bajul and he meets a Gambian reporter, Miss Fiona McKenzie, and Miss Fiona McKenzie is talking about the book that Abiola has written, the book that Madam Rispa has talked about, Failure of States. She's asking him, how come in your book, Failure of States, you are so pessimistic about the future of the African countries. Yet, when you're talking about Omega, you're sounding so optimistic. What Mackenzie didn't know is that actually, on the ground, Abiola was not supporting Omega. He had already changed allegiance and he was now supporting Alpha. So, basically, that's all that. So, at the end of it all, Mr. Thaddeus Longway was able to convince him to join Hagda, and so he was recruited as the guide. He was supposed to be the guide to connect or to guide the 4 path alpha travelers. Mr. Professor Karanja, Comrade Melusi,
Engineer
Tahil, and Pastor Chamaka.
Wonderful. Now, students at home, I know now you have a lot of information concerning one Dr. Abiola Afolabi. We see him as the guide. So even as you analyze this book, even as you look at the fathers of nations, ensure that you're looking at Dr. Afolabi as the guide. He's the person who was giving, at first when we meet him, we don't know who he is. He's just calling the 4 characters, telling them what they need to do. And we see them being given the 2 documents that they needed to look at, Way Omega and Path Alpha. Definitely without Dr. Afolabi, they would not have gotten a chance to go to the summit. And this is why now Tad says, just be part of the summit. Pretend as if you're supporting Way Omega, so that we get now a chance to go into the summit and present Path Alpha.
Indeed.
And if you have gone through the book, then you realize that after that, we have the four observers now going into the summit. And before they are given a chance, before he's given a chance to speak, that is Dr. Abiola Afolabi, he says that he has 5 friends that he will share his time with. Remember, we only had 15 minutes for the 2 speakers. And the first speaker had used a lot of time. And so 7 minutes were given to Dr. Afolabi
to share with his
friends. 5 friends. So as he shares, we get to know about Path Alpha. So the next character that we shall be looking at is Miss Fiona McKenzie. This is a character I love. We see young women doing so much. She brings a lot of work from the media. She's a reporter. She's lovely. So Madam Rispa, kindly take us through the character.
Okay. When you're analyzing Fathers of Nations, we're looking at women they're not really dwelt on. Therefore, in Miss Mackenzie, we have at least one of women characters. What you can say about Mrs. Mackenzie is that, first of all, Miss Mackenzie is that she's a journalist, she's 35 years of age, and she's also someone admirable. I'm looking at her, the first instance they encountered with Dr. Afolabi. Dr. Afolabi, before he could really understand Miss Mackenzie, he had a positive description of her, that she is as cute as a button and as sharp as a needle. We can't forget to talk about the close relationship that she develops with Dr. Afolabi, even though at the first instance, they had some kind of misunderstanding between them. And Dr. Afolabi looked at her and thought, this is not the kind of person I would like to deal with. And this was simply because she had described his book as pessimistic, and the doctor realized that this lady had not actually read his book. About Mackenzie, further we can say that Mackenzie, as much as she is a Gambian, she holds a European name of Scottish origin. The mystery behind it is that she had lost her parents at a very young age. Below 1 year. From the age of 1 year, she had been raised by Elizabeth and Ian Mackenzie, therefore adopting their surname, hence the name Mackenzie. Fiona also had an encounter with the librarian Mola. The librarian Mola had seen Miss Mackenzie and simply interpreted that the place of a woman is to serve the interest of a man, sexual interest of a man. Therefore, the man had tried to abduct her, but then, and he was referring to her as Joy.
Yeah, Joy.
And then we wondered, has this woman actually changed her name from Fiona to Joy? Later on, we are learning that the name Joy is a slang for a streetwalker, a prostitute.
Yes.
After being saved by Dr. Afolabi, hence ensued their close relationship. That was the beginning of their close relationship.
Yeah.
Fiona also closely relates with Nick, a technician. And from Nick, she's able to learn a lot of things. For instance, that there's a silent listener. There's a silent listener that is able to gather information. And at a certain point, she shares this information with Dr. Afolabi. Therefore, Afolabi is also kept on his toes that as much as their activities, whatever they're doing, there's also someone who is privy to the information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, looking at Miss Fiona McKenzie. Yeah, we're just looking at the place of women in the society, basically. Because looking at the book, we're looking at fathers of nations. These are presidents. We have very few women characters in the book, and we're looking at how the society treats women. It's such a sad state of affairs when a woman is seen to be seen as a prostitute. Take now Miss Mackenzie, for instance. Now the Mula says this is Joy. A prostitute, just because of how she looks. This is unacceptable. And I'm glad that Paul B. Vita brings out such issues that happen in the society so that we treat women in a better way. And looking at now Miss Fiona McKenzie, she has a very important role in the book. So she develops this theme. So later on, as we discuss the themes, we shall be looking at some of the things that are developed by looking at Miss Fiona McKenzie. The next character...
Before the next one, please.
Yes, kindly.
Could I add something about Fiona McKenzie? Fiona McKenzie, at first, when you're meeting her, she's working as a journalist under Gambian News.
Yes.
Later on, she's offered a chance to work with VOA, Voice of America, for a better pay, and she takes the chance.
Yeah.
That is how she's now covering the summit, no longer under Gambian News, but now under VOA.
Yes. Thank you for that. At least now we get to know how now Fiona gets to be part of the summit. At first, we meet her when she's doing that interview with Dr. Afolabi. But later on, we see she's part of the team that goes to the summit. So the next character that we'll be looking at is Thaddeus Longway, Teacher Emmys.
Thank you once again. So I'm going to look at Thaddeus Longway, simply referred to as Mr. Tad Longway in the book. So Tad is the short form for the name Thaddeus. So it's the same person. So Mr. Tad is 50 plus years old. He's a white man, but is South African.
Yeah, South Africa.
So he's the director of the special project of AGDA. For those who forgot, AGDA means Agency for Governance and Development in Africa. So AGDA is based in Cape Town in South Africa. So he's also in charge of recruiting the Path travelers, the Path Alpha travelers. So he travels from South Africa to various African countries to go and recruit these people who are supposed to be the Path Alpha travelers. So he meticulously chooses his people, because if you look at the people who are working under him, they have some sort of a common what?
Agenda.
Agenda, or they have suffered something that a common challenge in the hands of their governments. If you look at like Professor Karanja, he had his own issues, the Kenyan government, and so are the other three that he approached. So he would approach each person and convince them that AGDA is the way to go, that Path Alpha is the solution to the problems that ail their countries. It is the solution to all the challenges or the crisis in governance that affects their countries, and is able to convince them because these characters in one way or the other have suffered a lot in the hands of their government or in the hands of the leaders in their countries. So he recruits all of them. He also recruits Dr. Afolabi, who according to him is the guide that is supposed to guide all these other 4 observers. So his role basically is to sensitize these people on the problems that are in their African countries, and also sensitize them on the agenda for the Path Alpha and how the Path Alpha is going to come in and work for the good of the African countries. So that is Mr. Thad Longway.
Wonderful. So, of course, looking at Thad Longway, this is a very important character in the book because through him we get to know about Path Alpha. And basically, we're looking at Path Alpha as the document that changes. It changes the lives of the Africans. Because at the end of the summit, this is the document that is adopted. So without him, definitely would not have talked about the two documents. And through Longway, again, we get to see how the 4 characters are connected to Dr. Abiola Afolabi, because he is the one now who talks to Dr. Afolabi so that he becomes the guide. And through these now we see Path Alpha being adopted. And lastly, we have the final character that we shall be discussing today, and this is Nicholas Sentinel, teacher Risba.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity once more. Looking at Nick Sentinel, Nick Sentinel is a youthful man of about 25 years. When Fiona joins to work with VOA, Nick had recently arrived from America. In fact, he's an American. He's a representation of the media. And if we look at it, even we can talk about him being a representation of technology. Look at the instances this guy is being referred to as the youth. Instead of referring to him as Nick, they constantly refer to him as the youth. The author is very particular. When he's referring to him as the youth, he's being particular on his age. At first instance, looking at him being referred to as the youth, you might see it as, why are they belittling this character, Nick Sentinel? They're belittling the guy. Others are being called pastor, engineer, professor. But this guy is simply a youth. But later on, you look at the role he plays through his silent listener. We are seeing that he's able to gather a lot of information. He's able to listen in on people's conversation. He's able to, using some method, he's able to identify a threat. He's able to identify a threat, therefore they're able to stop it in good time. Also through Nick, the group that is advancing Path Alpha acquires information beforehand. For example, it acquires the information on the trick. These people, when they see that they won't reach a consensus, they fall back on advancing a trick that will save face for everyone. At the same time, through Nick's silent listener, we are able to get prior information on the method they'll be using, the what are they called? The choice matrix. They get that information prior. Maybe he might not be having the details of what the choice matrix entails, but he gives the information beforehand. Now, we are now left to interpret that it is not really about belittling Nick when you're constantly calling him the youth, but to show that as much as he is not advanced in age, he still plays a major role. Now to the youth, maybe the ones that are listening, you are not leaders of tomorrow, you're actually leaders of today. And with technology, the youth should stand up to be counted.
That's so good. Now, students at home, I know you have gathered a lot of information concerning how many characters. We have 4 main characters, and then we have the guide, who is Dr. Afolabi. Together with the other 3 characters that we have discussed today, then you can comfortably talk about the characters in the book. Now, a question for you as we wind up. Would you say that Dr. Abiola Afolabi was the perfect person to play that role as the guide. We shall be looking forward for your answers. Now, remember, we're still looking at fathers of nations. Thank you for listening. Until next time, it's a goodbye from us.